The explosion tore through the dawn silence like a thunderclap, and shrapnel whistled past the man crouched in the rubble, missing his head by centimeters. Victor Cross's boot slammed into his back, driving him deeper into the concrete dust. "Stay down, you pathetic washout. This ain't no place for broken soldiers playing hero." Cruel laughter erupted from the elimination squad. 5 elite operatives circling their target like sharks. Captain Lisa Morgan, the lead coordinator gripping her tactical board, shook her head in disgust. 5 feet 8 inches, limping like an old man. What a disgrace. Get him out of here before someone gets killed. David Kane remained motionless in the debris, eyes closed, dust coating his weathered face. His scarred hands trembled as they gripped the modified rifle someone had damaged, the scope deliberately knocked out of alignment. He didn't resist when Cross yanked the weapon from his grip and hurled it into the wreckage. $50 says he breaks before noon, a voice called out. Make it 100. I bet he has another panic attack first, another responded. The morning sun at Quantico's elite counter-terrorism training facility cast harsh shadows across the urban warfare simulation where only 1% of candidates would ever qualify. But in the brief silence between the mocking laughter, a detail passed unnoticed. The way his fingers had traced the damaged scope, calculating the deviation to the exact degree with practiced precision. In 52 minutes, this seemingly insignificant moment would determine the survival of 31 people. The humiliation had started the moment David arrived at 0500 hours that morning. While other candidates emerged from government SUVs and military transports, he'd climbed out of a rusted pickup truck with mismatched tires. His gear looked like military surplus, a faded digital camo uniform that hung loose on his thin frame, boots with worn soles held together with superglue, and a kit bag that appeared to have survived multiple deployments. If this story about a broken veteran being crushed in the dirt makes your blood boil, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps me continue sharing these powerful stories. For those who want to support more tales of injustice and incredible reversals like this one, there's a thanks button below. Now, let's see how David responds to this brutal treatment. The morning had begun 4 hours earlier in the temporary barracks. David woke before his alarm, his internal clock precise despite years of disrupted sleep patterns. In the darkness, he arranged his few belongings with military precision, each item in its designated place. The other candidates, all 12 of them, were still asleep, exhausted from yesterday's preliminary psychological evaluations. He dressed silently, each movement deliberate despite a visible tremor in his left hand. As he pulled on his worn uniform shirt, fluorescent light from the corridor caught something on his neck, a long scar running from ear to collarbone, pale against his sun-damaged skin. His fingers unconsciously traced it before he pulled the collar up. A flash of memory intruded. Smoke, screaming, the weight of a sniper rifle, someone yelling, "Overwatch, take the shot." The crack of his weapon. Target neutralized. Civilians clear. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing the images away, and carefully wrapped his right ankle, an old injury that throbbed in the morning chill. By 0530 hours, David sat alone at the far end of the briefing room, his back to the wall, eyes automatically scanning all entrances and exits. The coffee was bitter, the protein bars worse. But he ate methodically, fueling his body for what lay ahead. That's when the elimination squad made their entrance. Victor Cross led them like he owned the facility. 6 feet 3 inches of muscle and swagger, his buzz cut pristine under the harsh lights. Behind him came Alex Razor Martinez with his perpetual cold stare, Tony Walsh flipping a tactical pen between his fingers, Maria Santos cracking her neck, and Jake Reynolds bringing up the rear, quieter than the others but no less intimidating. They commandeered the center tables, their voices filling the space with stories of successful operations and impossible eliminations. Sarah Kim, the only female candidate showing real promise, tried to approach David's corner with her coffee. "Don't even think about it," Cross's voice sliced through the chatter. "Washouts sit alone. Winners network with winners." Sarah hesitated, then reluctantly joined another group, shooting David a sympathetic glance. David didn't react. He continued eating, but his peripheral vision tracked Cross's approach. The man loomed over his table, casting a shadow across his tray. Well, look what the VA hospital discharged. You lost, buddy. The psychiatric wing is across the street. He looked up, meeting Cross's eyes briefly before returning to his food. Something in that glance made Cross pause. Not submission exactly, but an absence of intimidation that didn't match his broken appearance. "I'm talking to you, candidate." He slammed his fist on the table, making David's water bottle jump. Still, he didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly reached out and steadied the bottle, then took another bite of his protein bar. The calculated indifference enraged Cross. "You deaf as well as damaged?" He grabbed David's tray and flipped it, sending food and coffee splashing across his uniform. The briefing room erupted in laughter and applause. David sat perfectly still for 5 seconds. Then he stood, picked up the tray, and walked to the cleanup station. No hurry, no anger, just mechanical efficiency. As he passed the elimination squad's table, his eyes swept across their positioning, and Instructor Blake, observing from the doorway, noticed something unusual. He'd automatically calculated tactical angles from his seat to the windows. Muscle memory. 0600 hours found them moving to the simulation area. Instructor Captain Morgan strutted at the front of the 47 candidates, her voice carrying across the morning air. "Today's initial assessment, urban warfare scenario with active hostile elements. Half of you won't make it past the first objective. The other half will wish they hadn't." Cross deliberately shoulder-checked David, sending him staggering. His equipment bag somehow tore open, spilling gear across the pavement. Oops. Butterfingers. More laughter from his squad. David steadied himself and began collecting his scattered equipment. He didn't curse or complain. He simply repacked everything systematically, his face expressionless. That's when Blake noticed his gait, too controlled for a civilian, heel-to-toe placement that made almost no sound on the concrete. Professional movement pattern. At 0630 hours, they reached the equipment depot for gear assignment. The quartermaster, a stern master sergeant named Cooper, handed out weapon assignments with barely concealed irritation. The elimination squad got premium equipment, new 416 Hong Kong dollars rifles with advanced optics. David got number 47. An ancient M16A2 that looked like it had survived Vietnam and both Gulf Wars. "Barrel's seen some use," Cooper understated, knowing full well the rifle was barely functional. "Scope might need adjustment." Translation: good luck hitting anything beyond spitting distance. His ammunition allocation was equally questionable. Standard rounds, sure, but from different manufacturing lots with varying specifications. Any experienced shooter would know this meant constant recalibration between shots. Nearly impossible to maintain accuracy. "Position 47, Morgan announced with barely concealed satisfaction. "Far left, the worst position in the simulation. Direct sun glare, crosswind amplified by the building configuration, and a concrete barrier that would trap his spent brass, creating a personal debris field with every shot." David accepted it all without comment. He carried his rifle to the position and began his setup. That's when the first surprise occurred. Despite the equipment sabotage, he methodically inspected each round by touch, using nothing but his fingertips to detect the slight weight variations. Sarah, setting up at position 46, watched in fascination as David arranged them in specific sequences. "Hey, broken arrow, the scrap yard is that way," Cross called out, generating another wave of laughter. "Maybe they can fix whatever's left of your sorry ass while you're at it." The warm-up was set for 200 meters. Basic qualification for any trained shooter. Cross went first, naturally. He made a show of his preparation, adjusting his optics with theatrical precision, controlling his breathing loudly enough for everyone to hear. 15 shots, 15 hits in the black. He stood up, arms raised like a champion. That's how professionals handle business, ladies and gentlemen. Elimination squad dominating. High fives all around. Morgan nodding approval. David's turn. He took 4 full minutes adjusting his ancient scope, ignoring the snickers and comments. When he finally fired, the results seemed to confirm everyone's assumptions. 11 hits out of 15, scattered across the target. But Blake frowned, pulling out his spotting scope for a closer look. The 11 hits weren't scattered at all. They were clustered in the exact center, overlapping. The 4 misses had been deliberate, way outside the scoring rings. He walked down range during the ceasefire to inspect. "I'll be damned," he muttered. The 4 missed shots showed deliberate placement patterns. The candidate had somehow identified which rounds were defective and intentionally placed them in non-scoring areas, while grouping the good ammunition in a perfect cluster. By 0730 hours, they'd moved to the 400-meter qualification. The wind had picked up to 15 knots with shifting directions. This was where real skill separated pretenders from professionals. Cross's group made sure to conduct loud conversations whenever David was in his shooting position. "So I told the terrorist, you can run, but you'll just die tired." Alex's story carried clearly across the range. One shot, 800 meters. Dude's head just exploded like. David was about to fire when Morgan accidentally kicked his rifle rest. Oops. Sorry, candidate. Equipment malfunction must be contagious. The rifle shifted, his shot went wide, and he had to start his entire breathing sequence over again. He began the tedious process of re-zeroing his scope. 7 minutes gone, 14 shots remaining, 6 minutes left on the clock. The elimination squad exchanged knowing smirks. During his next attempt, Tony casually loosened his rifle sling while pretending to adjust his own equipment. Jake stumbled past his position, kicking debris into his face just as he was about to squeeze the trigger. Maria somehow managed to spill water on his shooting mat, creating a muddy mess. Despite the sabotage, David scored 12 out of 15 hits. Cross's fury was evident. He'd only managed 10 in the same conditions, even with perfect equipment and no interference. 0830 hours brought an unexpected development. David muttered to himself while calculating a shot, wind speed 2.1 meters per second, shifting to 1.6, thermal rise negligible. The terminology was too precise, too technical for someone with his supposed background. Sarah overheard and whispered to Blake, "He's not holding his breath like a novice either. Box breathing pattern. That's advanced combat stress control." That's when Director Harrison arrived. The commanding officer of the counter-terrorism program rarely observed initial qualifications. But something had drawn him out this morning. He took position in the observation tower, binoculars trained on the simulation area. Cross, sensing an opportunity to impress, announced a special challenge to the group. "All right, candidates. Moving targets at 600 meters. Loser cleans the entire facility for a month. Who's got the skills?" He looked directly at David. "How about it, Broken Arrow? Unless you're scared of a little competition." David looked up from his rifle. For the first time all morning he spoke. "Terms." His voice was steadier than expected, carrying an undertone that made several candidates pause. Cross blinked, momentarily thrown off by his acceptance. 7 targets, 45 seconds, standard silhouettes, he grinned. "Age before beauty. Experience before arrogance," David replied quietly, generating surprised chuckles from some candidates. Cross's face reddened. He took position with exaggerated confidence, making sure the director could see his form. The targets began their lateral movement, moderate speed, predictable pattern. He fired rapidly, trusting his instincts and superior equipment. 5 hits out of 7. He jumped up, pumping his fist. "Beat that, has-been." Morgan helped David load his magazine, and he noticed immediately that something was wrong. The rounds were mixed, some newer match grade, some older training rounds. The weight differences would significantly affect his trajectory calculations. He looked at Morgan, who smirked. "Problem, candidate?" He said nothing but began arranging the rounds in his magazine in a specific order, heaviest to lightest. The elimination squad laughed. "What's wrong, Broken Arrow? Trying to make them pretty." David took his position. The spotters watched through their scopes as he acquired the first target. His body went unnaturally still. Even his breathing seemed to cease. He fired, hit center mass. He worked the bolt with mechanical precision, already tracking the second target. The crosswind gusted suddenly, but he'd anticipated it, adjusting mid-aim. Second shot, second hit. By the third shot, the laughter had died. By the fourth, Cross's triumphant expression had faded. When the 7th target fell with a perfect center hit, the range was silent except for the distant clang of metal on metal. Blake checked his stopwatch. 38 seconds. 7 for 7. With mixed ammunition and sabotaged equipment. "That's impossible," someone whispered. Not with those loads. Director Harrison lowered his binoculars slowly. Something about his shooting rhythm nagged at him. That 4-4-2 breathing pattern. Where had he seen it before? David accessed his equipment using what appeared to be standard civilian gear, but was actually military-grade technology. The tablet he used for ballistic calculations featured hardened circuitry designed for extreme conditions. His communication device had satellite uplink capabilities that could function in the most hostile environments, maintaining contact even when conventional systems failed. By 0900 hours, the psychological warfare had escalated to direct confrontation. Cross cornered David at the equipment shed during a break. Accidents happen in live-fire exercises, old man. Would be a real shame if someone got hurt because they didn't know their limitations. Alex and Tony flanked him, boxing him against the wall. David didn't flinch, but his eyes automatically mapped exits. Door 15 feet, window 10 feet, gap between Alex and Tony approximately 20 inches. You listening to me? Cross grabbed David's left wrist, his thumb pressing into visible scar tissue. What's this? Try to end it all when you realized you were finished. For the first time, something flickered in David's eyes. Not fear, something much colder. He looked directly at Cross, and the younger man unconsciously took a half step back. Then the moment passed and he was just a damaged veteran surrounded by aggressive men again. I need to clean my weapon, he said quietly. Yeah, you do that. Cross released his wrist. Clean it real good. Might be the last time you handle one. Inside the armory, David disassembled his rifle with practiced efficiency. Even surrounded by hostile operatives, his hands never shook. The breakdown took exactly 8 seconds. He didn't hurry, didn't fumble, just worked with mechanical precision that spoke of thousands of repetitions. Tony noticed first. Yo, he's pretty quick with that. So what? Maria scoffed. My nephew can take apart his video game controller fast too. But Alex was frowning. No, look at his finger discipline. See how he keeps it indexed along the receiver? That's not civilian training. By 0930, Director Harrison had quietly initiated a background check on David Kane. The results came back suspiciously sparse. Too sparse. Born in Michigan, unremarkable high school records, brief military service with medical discharge. It was a cover story, a well-crafted one, but a cover story nonetheless. He pulled Blake aside. That candidate, Kane. Something familiar about his technique. Sir. Keep an eye on him. And I want the video from today's shooting. All of it. The morning's final evolution was announced. Night infiltration exercise through the abandoned industrial complex. Solo routes, no backup, scheduled for 2,000 hours. David received his map and immediately noticed his route went through Sector 9. Abandoned since the 1980s, full of collapsed structures and hazardous debris. The elimination squad volunteered to set up checkpoint security. Morgan approved with a knowing smile. Sarah tried to warn David during the lunch break. Listen, I know we're not supposed to talk, but that route they gave you, there's an old chemical plant at grid reference 429. The structure's unstable. If someone wanted to. I know, David said quietly, surprising her. Thank you. You know? Then why aren't you saying something? David looked at her steadily. Because sometimes the trap reveals the hunter. 1,000 hours brought the stress shooting test. Candidates had to sprint 600 meters in full gear, then engage targets within 90 seconds while their heart rates were still elevated. Most struggled to control their breathing, their shots wild as their bodies demanded oxygen. Cross finished his run and dropped prone, his chest heaving. The range safety officer checked his vitals. Heart rate 115, respiratory rate 26. It took him 2 minutes to get his first shot off. David finished his run and assumed his shooting position. The RSO frowned at his monitor. Equipment malfunction. No way. His heart rate read 52. Blake checked the backup monitor. Same reading. He watched as David's breathing immediately fell into a controlled pattern. He fired his first shot 45 seconds after finishing the run. Heart rate never exceeded 58. That's not natural, Morgan muttered. Nobody recovers that fast. But Director Harrison, watching from the tower, had seen it before. Combat veterans who'd learned to control their autonomic responses, who could slow their heart rates on command. It took years of training and usually came with a price. Experiences that forced you to master your body or die. The false identity seed was planted during the lunch break. Maria accidentally left an old military magazine near David's seat. The headline read, "Sniper Breaks Distance Record." The photo showed a man who could have been David from behind, same build, similar stance. The name was Daniel Kane. "Hey, that's you," Tony exclaimed with fake surprise. "David, Daniel. Close enough, right?" David glanced at the magazine without picking it up. "Not me." "Come on, don't be modest," Alex pressed. "Says here he was Special Operations. That's what you did, right?" "I was Signal Corps. Communications." His voice was flat, uninterested. He stood and left, abandoning his unfinished meal. Morgan grabbed the magazine, studying it intently. "Well, team, looks like our mystery is solved. Just another broken operator trying to relive his glory days." But Harrison wasn't buying it. He made another call, this time to a friend at Special Operations Command. "Pull the records on Daniel Kane, the sniper from that magazine piece." "What do you mean he's still classified? Active operations?" That was 5 years ago. Watching David navigate through his day was like observing a shadow trying to pretend it was solid. He made all the right mistakes, fumbling with equipment he'd supposedly never used, asking basic questions about procedures, maintaining the facade of inexperience. But the details betrayed him. The way he automatically cleared corners when entering buildings. How he never sat with his back exposed. The unconscious way his trigger finger indexed along any straight edge. Have you ever been in a situation where people underestimated you because of appearances or assumptions? When you knew you could accomplish something, but no one would give you the chance? Share your experience in the comments below. And now, as evening approaches over Quantico, the real test is about to begin. 1,400 hours brought advanced tactical planning, where candidates had to calculate complex mission parameters accounting for weather, terrain, civilian population density, and collateral damage assessment. Most pulled out calculators and reference manuals, frantically computing solutions. David wrote his solutions directly on the worksheet. No calculator, no references, just neat rows of equations that included factors most operators didn't learn until advanced schools. When he factored in urban canyon wind effects on long-range shots, Blake couldn't stay quiet. "Where did you learn that formula?" He looked up, seeming to realize his mistake. "I read it somewhere." "What book?" Morgan demanded. "That's classified methodology." "I don't remember the title." He lowered his eyes, playing confused. "I read a lot of technical stuff." But the damage was done. His formula included correction factors that had only been developed 18 months ago by Special Operations Command's Advanced Tactics Unit. No civilian publication would have it. The Elimination Squad sabotage reached new heights by 1,500 hours. They had rigged his night vision equipment with dead batteries, loosened the mount on his rifle scope, and planted false evidence in his locker, pages from classified manuals with notes in the margins designed to look like he'd been cheating. The plan was elegant. Get him lost in the industrial complex after dark, lock him in the old chemical plant, then discover the evidence. He'd be disqualified for cheating and going off course. Clean, efficient, cruel. But they didn't count on Jake Reynolds developing a conscience. Jake had been quiet all day, participating just enough to avoid Cross's suspicion. But something about the escalating cruelty bothered him. Maybe it was the way David never complained, never begged, just endured it all with quiet dignity. Or maybe it was the memory of his own father, dead at 45 from untreated PTSD after 3 combat tours. He found David during the afternoon break, checking his equipment in a quiet corner. "Listen, I don't have much time. Tonight at Checkpoint 4, there's an old plant structure. They're planning to—" "I know," David's quiet response stopped him cold. "You know? Then why are you going along with it?" He looked at Jake with those unnaturally calm eyes. "Because sometimes you have to enter the maze to find the center. But thank you. Your father would understand." Jake went pale. "How do you know about my father?" "The same way I know you've been fighting Cross's influence all week. The same way I know you keep his Purple Heart in your right cargo pocket." Some things you can't hide from someone trained to observe. He handed Jake something, his backup compass. You'll want to stay with the main group tonight. All of them. At 1,600 hours, during vehicle maintenance training, the elimination squad made their most dangerous move yet. Someone had tampered with David's safety harness. Not obviously, just enough to fail under stress. The training required rappelling from a 4-story tower, making rapid descents with tactical equipment. David performed his standard safety inspection, his hands running along every component. When he reached the harness connection point, his fingers paused for just a moment. Then he continued as if nothing was wrong. He completed the exercise using backup safety procedures and emergency techniques, never trusting the primary harness once. To observers, it looked like excessive caution. Only Blake noticed he'd identified the sabotage and adapted instantly. How? Cross was beside himself. How does he keep avoiding everything? But the revelation came from an unexpected source. Master Sergeant Thompson, the oldest instructor at the facility, had been walking past the training tower using his distinctive careful gait, a souvenir from Fallujah. He stopped dead when he saw David descend from the tower. His stance, the way he positioned his feet, the angle of his shoulders. He'd seen it before years ago, in a place that didn't officially exist. Used by an operator who didn't officially exist. No, he whispered. Can't be. He's supposed to be dead. They told us he was dead. He turned and hurried away before anyone could question him, but Harrison caught the reaction. Another piece of the puzzle. 1,700 hours. Final preparations. David checked and rechecked his equipment, finding and fixing each act of sabotage with methodical precision. He packed extra water, energy bars, a first aid kit, and several items that seemed odd for a simple infiltration exercise. Chemical lights, paracord, a small crowbar. Sarah slipped him a GPS beacon during equipment check. I've got a bad feeling about tonight. Keep this. David pressed it back into her hands. But thank you. Stay close to Jake Reynolds tonight. He's going to need backup. Backup for what? David just gave her that ghost of a smile and moved away. In the operations center, Captain Hayes from Internal Security was showing Harrison a classified file. The photo inside was partially redacted, showing a man in tactical gear, face obscured by shadows and camouflage paint. Ghost Walker, MIA, presumed Kia, September 2019. One of our best. 89 confirmed eliminations in 4 years. Why are you showing me this? Because someone flagged his biometrics as a possible match with your candidate Kane. Same height, same build, similar movement signatures. But it's impossible. Ghost Walker died in a drone strike outside Damascus. Entire safe house destroyed. No survivors. Harrison studied the photo. Something about the posture. Get me his complete file. Everything you have. Sir, that's need to know. Captain, I've got a feeling I need to know. Make it happen. 2,000 hours. The infiltration exercise began with 47 candidates dispersing across the industrial complex. David entered the abandoned area alone, his movements silent despite the gathering darkness. He wasn't following the marked route. Instead, he paralleled it, staying in the shadows. The elimination squad waited at checkpoint 4, their ambush prepared. The old chemical plant steel door stood open, inviting. They disabled his night vision, sabotaged his compass, and ensured he'd have to pass this way. Where is he? Alex checked his watch. He should have been here 30 minutes ago. Maybe he got lost already, Maria suggested. That compass we doctored points 40 degrees off. But Cross wasn't buying it. Something felt wrong. The complex was too quiet, and he had the unsettling feeling they were being watched. 20-30 hours. David had indeed reached checkpoint 4, but not as they expected. He'd scaled a crane 80 meters from the plant and was observing them through compact binoculars he'd concealed in his gear. 5 operatives waiting, Jake notably absent. Good. He'd listened. He could have simply avoided them, completed an alternate route. But that wasn't why he was here. There were larger games in play, and sometimes you had to let the enemy think they'd won. He climbed down and approached from the expected direction, making just enough noise to alert them. Checkpoint 4, Kane reporting. They emerged from concealment like wolves, surrounding him quickly. Alex grabbed his arms while Tony took his rifle. Cross's grin was predatory in the moonlight. Well, right on schedule, Broken Arrow. End of the line for you. I need to check in at the checkpoint, he said calmly. For my navigation card. Oh, you'll check in all right. Maria opened the plant door, the rusty hinges screaming. In there. We'll let you out in the morning. Maybe. They forced him toward the entrance. David memorized every detail, the locking mechanism, the hinges, the structural weaknesses. As they shoved him inside, he caught Cross's wrist for just a moment. 8 hours, he said quietly. You might want to stay together. All of you. What's that supposed to mean? Just advice. He stepped into the darkness willingly. Tick-tock. The door slammed shut, the locking bar dropping into place with a solid clang. Inside, absolute darkness and the smell of 40 years of chemical decay. The elimination squad celebrated outside, already composing their story. 45 hours. David waited exactly 90 seconds, listening to them move away. Then he went to work. The emergency supplies he'd noticed earlier were still there, industrial but serviceable. He assembled makeshift tools in complete darkness, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. The lock was old, commercial grade by 1980s standards. Someone trained in covert entry would know a dozen ways to defeat it. He chose the quietest method, working the mechanism with improvised picks fashioned from metal debris he'd found. Outside, the elimination squad was rehearsing their story. They'd claim he never showed up at the checkpoint. Must have gotten lost. The evidence in his locker would be discovered during the search. Morgan would regretfully recommend immediate dismissal. 2,100 hours. The first explosion shattered the night. Not a training charge, live ordnance. The sound of automatic weapons followed, the distinctive bark of AK-74s. Not from the range, from the facility perimeter. Sector 12. The elimination squad froze in disbelief. This wasn't part of any exercise. What the hell? Tony's voice cracked. More explosions. The base alarms began wailing. DEFCON 1, the highest threat level. This was real. Cross's radio crackled to life. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill. We have multiple hostiles inside the perimeter. They looked at each other in growing horror. They were 3 miles from the main facility, armed only with their training equipment, and they just locked their only real operative in a building with no way to communicate. 2,115 hours. Reports flooded the emergency channels. 15 to 18 hostiles had breached the perimeter, heading for the classified research facility. Base security was engaged and taking casualties. 4 guards confirmed Kia. The attackers were well-trained, well-equipped, and had inside knowledge of security protocols. Director Harrison was in the Tactical Operations Center. Where are my response teams? Sir, Alpha and Bravo teams are conducting training exercises 40 minutes out. Charlie team is on standby but undermanned. What about the infiltration exercise? 47 candidates scattered across the industrial complex. None with live ammunition. Harrison's face went white. His candidates were sitting ducks. Back at the chemical plant, Alex was frantically working the lock, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't manage the mechanism. Come on. He's probably passed out from panic anyway, Maria said, but her voice lacked conviction. They could hear the gunfire getting closer. Shut up and help me. Cross shoved Alex aside, yanking at the bar. It wouldn't budge. That's when they heard it, a metallic click from inside the plant. The door swung open slowly, and David stepped out into the moonlight. Calm, collected, his makeshift lockpick still in his hand. The elimination squad stared in shock. He surveyed them with those flat, emotionless eyes, then asked quietly, "Where's the nearest weapons cache?" Cross's mouth worked soundlessly. Finally, he managed, "What?" "Weapons cache. Emergency armory. Every facility has them." His voice had changed, lower, commanding, dangerous. "Status report. Now." Something in his tone triggered automatic responses. 15 to 18 Tangos, Sector 12, moving toward the research facility. Base security engaged and pinned. He was already moving, and they found themselves following without question. David led them through the complex at a pace that should have been impossible in the dark, especially with sabotaged equipment. But he moved like the darkness was his element, avoiding obstacles they couldn't see until they'd passed them. Can you spot the crucial detail? Why was David so calm when they trapped him? And that sound he identified in the plant, those weren't regular training explosives. Share this with your friends and watch from minute 22:45. Everything is about to completely reverse. 2,125 hours. They reached Emergency Armory 12, a nondescript concrete building that most candidates didn't even know existed. The sergeant on duty started to protest unauthorized access. David stepped into the light. Code Black 7. The sergeant's eyes widened. He looked at David's face, then at something on his computer screen, then back at him. Without another word, he opened the armory. David went straight to a specific case, bypassing all the standard weapons. Inside was a Barrett M82A1, serial number GW003. The elimination squad watched him check the weapon with movements so practiced they seemed choreographed. That's... Alex's voice failed him. That's restricted to Tier 1 operators. He loaded specific ammunition, .50 BMG match grade with a particular lot number. His hands moved independently, muscle memory taking over while his mind calculated wind speeds, distances, angles. Stay here, he ordered. Guard the armory. No one gets these weapons except confirmed friendlies. You can't go alone, Maria protested. But he was already gone, melting into the darkness with his rifle and kit. The elimination squad looked at each other, suddenly realizing they'd just taken orders from the man they'd tormented all day. And it had felt completely natural. 2,135 hours. David reached Building 47, the communication center that offered the best vantage point over Sector 12. He scaled the external ladder one-handed, rifle slung, moving with economy of motion that spoke of countless similar climbs. The roof was flat, perfect for a shooting position. He had clear lines of sight to the tree line where muzzle flashes marked enemy positions. 900 yards to the nearest hostile, wind gusting at 20 knots from the northeast, temperature dropping. He found the enemy sniper first. She was excellent, well concealed, disciplined with her shots. She had 3 of base security's response teams pinned down. Wounded operators bleeding out in the open because no one could reach them. David built his position in 30 seconds. No sandbags, no bipod, just his body positioned perfectly to absorb the massive recoil. He found his natural point of aim, controlled his breathing, and entered the zone, what snipers called the bubble, where time slowed and everything except the target faded away. Distance, 912 yards. Wind, compensate 4.2 mils right. Temperature, negligible effect at this range. Target, partial headshot below helmet rim. 1.5 inches of lethal target area. He fired between heartbeats. The massive rifle thundered once. 912 yards away, the hostile sniper's head snapped backward. She slumped over her rifle, suddenly and completely dead. David was already moving, displacing to a new position. Rule 1 of sniper warfare, never fire twice from the same location. The remaining hostiles hadn't heard his shot over the ambient gunfire, hadn't seen his muzzle flash. Their first indication. Something was wrong was their sniper's sudden silence. He found the machine gun team next. They were laying suppressing fire on the main gate, keeping reinforcements from entering. The gunner was partially exposed, confident in his cover. 873 yards. Adjust for the heat shimmer over the asphalt. Lead the target 1.8 mils to account for his movement pattern. The gunner was mid-burst when David's round took him center mass. He dropped like his strings had been cut. His assistant gunner looked around wildly, trying to spot the threat. David's second shot caught him as he tried to take over the weapon. In the Tactical Operations Center, Director Harrison watched through security cameras. The quality wasn't perfect at this distance, but he could see enough. A lone figure on the rooftop engaging targets with mechanical precision. "Who is that?" someone asked. Harrison pulled up another screen showing the armory access log. Emergency issue 2128 hours. Barrett M82A1. Serial number GW003. His hands started shaking. "Sir," his aide prompted. "Get me General Patterson. Priority Alpha." He turned to Master Sergeant Thompson, who had just arrived. "Run the shot pattern analysis. 442 interval." Thompson was already watching the feed. "Sir, that's Damascus Protocol. Only one person ever used that rhythm." "I know," Harrison's voice was tight. "But he's dead. We buried him. I was at the memorial service." "Sir," Thompson said slowly, "we buried someone. But we never recovered the body. I was there for the aftermath. It was bad, sir. Burned beyond recognition. DNA testing was inconclusive on 3 of them." "You're saying he survived?" "I'm saying someone with his exact shooting pattern just saved this facility." Thompson pulled up the analysis. 442 interval between shots. "It's like a fingerprint, sir. No one else shoots with that rhythm." Hayes from internal security burst in. "Sir, I've been monitoring candidate Kane. He just returned a weapon to the armory. Serial number GW003. Harrison felt his world tilt. "That's Ghostwalker's personal weapon." "Yes, sir. It should have been destroyed 3 years ago, but someone kept it in inventory. Someone who knew he'd come back for it." The pieces were falling into place too fast. Harrison grabbed his phone. "Get me General Patterson now." "Sir, the general is already en route. His helicopter lands in 15 minutes. Of course he was, because General Michael Patterson wasn't just the counter-terrorism command director. According to the file Harrison was reading, he was also Ghostwalker's emergency contact. His handler. 2,145 hours. David had eliminated 11 hostiles in 14 minutes. Each shot was perfect, central nervous system hits that dropped targets instantly. He moved constantly, never giving the enemy a chance to pinpoint his location. The remaining hostiles were panicking. Their radios, which David monitored through a captured earpiece, were full of frightened chatter in Arabic and Russian. They'd come expecting easy targets and classified intelligence. Instead, they were being hunted by a phantom. He found their commander trying to coordinate a retreat. The man was shouting into his radio, demanding extraction. 1,047 yards. Extreme range even for the Barrett. Wind shifting, temperature dropping, a difficult shot. David made minute adjustments, feeling more than calculating the solution. He entered that space where conscious thought ceased and instinct took over. The rifle became an extension of his will. The commander's torso exploded mid-sentence. The remaining 4 hostiles broke and ran. David tracked them clinically, dropping each one before they could reach the extraction point. 15 targets, 15 kills. Elapsed time, 16 minutes 23 seconds. He safed his weapon and keyed the captured radio. Sector 12 clear. Recommend recovery teams move now. In the distance, he could hear helicopters approaching, the quick reaction force finally arriving. But the battle was already over. David climbed down from the roof, his movements showing the first signs of fatigue. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the familiar emptiness that followed combat. He'd forgotten how cold it felt afterward. The elimination squad was still at the armory when he returned. They snapped to attention without thinking, Cross actually saluting before catching himself. David ignored them, focusing on the sergeant. Weapon cleared and safed. Round count, 17 expended. Serial number GW003. Returning to inventory. The sergeant looked at his computer screen, then at David, then at the screen again. "Sir, this weapon is registered to." "I know who it's registered to." He set the rifle on the counter. "Tell Director Harrison I'll be in his office in 30 minutes. After I clean up." He turned to go, then paused. The elimination squad was staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror. He studied them for a moment with those flat, dangerous eyes. "Cross." The man straightened reflexively. "Report to the commander's office at 0700. Bring your squad. All of them." He paused. "Including Reynolds." Then he was gone, leaving them standing there in shock. 2,155 hours. The base was in controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles raced toward Sector 12. The quick reaction force helicopters circled, looking for targets that no longer existed. And in the Tactical Operations Center, Director Harrison stared at a classified file that had just been delivered. Sergeant David Kellner, call sign Ghost Walker. 89 confirmed eliminations over 4 operational years. Specialties: urban warfare, counter-sniper operations, high-value target elimination. The photograph was 4 years old, showing a man in full tactical gear, face partially obscured by camouflage paint. But the eyes were unmistakable, those same flat, emotionless eyes that had looked at him from across a training range 18 hours ago. "This is impossible," he muttered. He died in September 2019. Drone strike outside Damascus. Entire safe house destroyed. Master Sergeant Thompson cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may, I was there for the after-action. We found bodies, but it was bad, sir. Incinerated beyond recognition. DNA testing was problematic on several of them." "You're saying he survived?" "I'm saying someone with his exact shooting signature just saved this base." Thompson pulled up the ballistics analysis. 4-4-2 interval between shots. "It's like a fingerprint, sir. No one else shoots with that rhythm." Hayes from internal security burst in. "Sir, I've been running deep background on candidate Kane. Multiple flags. Financial records that don't match his stated employment. Travel patterns that suggest classified movement. And this." He handed Harrison a photograph from a surveillance camera at Dulles Airport 3 days ago. A man who looked exactly like David Kane, but the facial recognition software had tagged him as someone else entirely. The system identified him as Thomas Mitchell, wanted by Interpol for arms trafficking. "But look at this," Hayes pulled up another screen. "Thomas Mitchell was confirmed dead in a car bombing in Beirut 2 months ago." Harrison felt pieces clicking into place. "How many identities does he have?" "At least 6 that we've found. All with death certificates. All with confirmed burial records." The door opened and General Patterson entered, still in flight gear. He was compact, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. His eyes found the classified file first. "Status," he said without preamble. 15 hostiles neutralized. No friendly casualties beyond the initial breach. Kane will be in custody within the hour. Harrison paused. "Sir, if that's even his real name." Patterson took a seat, his expression unreadable. "His real name is Daniel Cross. Former Delta Force, recruited into a classified program in 2015. Officially died in 2019, but that was operational necessity." Operational necessity? "We needed him to disappear. Completely. The program he was part of had been compromised. 3 other operators were killed because someone was selling our identities to hostile forces. The only way to find the leak was to make Daniel dead and let him hunt from the shadows." Harrison leaned back. "For 4 years. For 4 years. Moving through different identities, different agencies, different private contractors. Following the money, the connections, the network of people selling American operators to the highest bidder. And that led him here." Patterson's expression hardened. "The leak we've been hunting? It's someone in this facility. Someone with access to your training records, your candidate profiles, your operational procedures. Daniel came here as bait." "Bait for who?" "For whoever ordered tonight's attack. Whoever knew exactly when your candidates would be scattered across the complex, unarmed and vulnerable. Whoever gave those hostiles your security protocols and patrol schedules." The room went silent except for the hum of electronics. Harrison felt his world shifting beneath him. "You're saying someone here set up my people?" "I'm saying someone here has been setting up operators for years. Tonight was supposed to be a massacre. 47 dead candidates, a penetrated facility, classified research stolen. Instead, it became a trap." Hayes cleared his throat. "Sir, if Daniel was working undercover, why didn't you tell us?" "Because we didn't know who to trust. The leak could have been anyone. Military, Civilian, contractor. The only way to smoke them out was to give them a target too tempting to resist. A knock at the door interrupted them. An MP entered. "Sir, candidate Kane is here as requested." "Send him in." David entered, having changed into clean ACUs. His hair was still damp from a quick shower. He moved with that same eerie silence, taking a seat across from Harrison without being invited. "Sergeant Cross," Patterson said. "Or do you prefer Kane?" "Mitchell?" "Walker?" David's expression didn't change. "Daniel will do, sir. That's the name my mother gave me." Report. Threat neutralized. All hostiles eliminated. No friendly casualties beyond the initial security team. The leak has been identified and contained. Harrison leaned forward. "What leak? Who?" Daniel pulled a tablet from his cargo pocket, sliding it across the table. "Financial records. Cryptocurrency transactions. Communication intercepts. Your evidence package." Harrison scrolled through the data, his face growing pale. "Captain Morgan? That's impossible. She's been here for 3 years. Check the timestamps against our casualties overseas. Every time we lost an operator, there's a corresponding payment to one of her accounts. She's been selling sniper graduates to hostile networks." Patterson leaned back. "How long have you known?" "Suspected for 6 weeks. Confirmed tonight when she personally sabotaged my equipment and positioned me where the elimination squad could neutralize me. She needed me gone before the attack, in case I proved problematic." "Where is she now?" Daniel glanced at his watch. "Military police should be taking her into custody right now, along with her contact in the State Department and 2 others in defense intelligence." As if on cue, Harrison's phone rang. He answered, listened, then hung up. "Captain Morgan is in custody. They found encrypted communications in her quarters. Payment records. Target lists." He looked at Daniel with new understanding. "The elimination squad, Cross and his team, you knew they'd try to eliminate you?" "I counted on it. Their aggression made them perfect tools. They provided authentic cover for my investigation while keeping me isolated from anyone who might recognize me." "And if they had succeeded? If they'd actually hurt you?" For the first time, something that might have been humor flickered in Daniel's eyes. "Sir, with respect, 5 bullies with training weapons against someone who survived Damascus, Kandahar, and 15 other places that don't appear on any map? The only danger was them accidentally hurting themselves. 2,200 hours. While they talked, military police were searching Captain Morgan's quarters. The evidence they found was comprehensive, not just financial records, but detailed dossiers on every candidate who'd graduated in the past 3 years. Names, photos, operational specialties, current assignments. A shopping catalog for enemy forces. Morgan tried to destroy evidence when they breached her door. She made it as far as her laptop before Staff Sergeant Kim tackled her with textbook precision. Her subsequent interrogation, conducted while Jake Reynolds provided moral support by glaring through the observation window, included names of contacts, payment methods, and future targets. Back in the conference room, Harrison was struggling to process everything. "Your death in Damascus, completely staged?" Daniel nodded. "The safe house was hit, yes, but I wasn't in it. We'd received intelligence about a mole in our chain of command. Someone was feeding our movements to the enemy. The only way to find them was to disappear, become someone else. For 4 years. It took that long to trace the network. Morgan was just one node. We've identified 23 others across different agencies and allied nations." He glanced at Patterson. "Phase 7 begins next week. And tonight." Harrison gestured at the facility. "This was all part of your investigation?" "The investigation led me here. Morgan was getting sloppy, taking bigger risks. We knew she'd have to make a major move soon. I provided the bait, a mysterious candidate with too many skills, too many questions surrounding him. She couldn't resist trying to eliminate me." Patterson leaned forward. "What's your assessment of the elimination squad?" Daniel considered. "Cross has leadership potential buried under insecurity and learned aggression. Redirect his energy toward legitimate targets, and he's salvageable. Martinez and Walsh are followers. They'll conform to whatever culture surrounds them. Santos has accuracy issues stemming from emotional instability, but it's correctable with proper training. He paused. Reynolds demonstrated moral courage under peer pressure. Attempted to warn me despite personal risk. Showed tactical thinking during crisis management. Recommend immediate advancement. You're recommending retention for people who abused you? I'm recommending consequences based on potential utility. His voice remained emotionless. Cross's reduction to private will teach humility. Kitchen duty for Martinez will instill discipline. Walsh's discharge is necessary. He lacks the emotional stability to adapt. But Reynolds showed the rarest quality in an operator, the ability to think independently under pressure. 2,300 hours. They were interrupted by a knock. Master Sergeant Thompson entered, his face grave. Sir, we've completed the full investigation. It's confirmed. Damascus Protocol, 442 interval. There's no doubt. He looked at Daniel with something approaching reverence. Sir, if I may, Tango 7, November 2017. That was you. Daniel nodded once. 1,284 yards, uphill through a sandstorm. Saved your convoy. Thompson's voice roughened. We never knew who our guardian angel was. Command said it was classified. It was Tuesday. Daniel's tone suggested this was explanation enough. Patterson stood. Director, I need to speak with my operator privately. We'll reconvene at 0800 for the full debrief. Harrison started to protest, then stopped. The politics of the situation were way above his pay grade. Of course, sir. Sergeant Cross, you're restricted to base pending the investigation's completion. Understood, sir. As they left, Hayes moved closer to Harrison. Sir, what do we do about the candidates? They all saw him operate. Videos are probably already circulating on social media. Harrison rubbed his temples. We'll deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, I need coffee. Maybe something stronger. 2,400 hours. Daniel and General Patterson sat in the base commander's office, the sound of distant helicopters providing white noise for their conversation. They hadn't embraced, hadn't shown any emotion. Their relationship existed in a space beyond conventional connection. You look tired, Patterson said finally. It's been a long day. Daniel rolled his shoulder, working out a kink. I'd forgotten how heavy the Barrett is. You could have used something lighter. Cross needed to see GW003. The serial number will circulate, create legend. Fear is a teaching tool. Patterson almost smiled. Still the instructor, even undercover. Especially undercover. Daniel looked out the window at the base lights. How's the team? Wondering when you're coming back. I'm not. The words were flat, final. Ghost Walker is dead. He needs to stay that way. Daniel, there are 12 more nodes to investigate. New identity, new approach for each one. We've discussed this. That was before tonight. Your cover's blown. Daniel Cross is burned. Daniel Cross is burned. Marcus Webb, the security consultant, starts his contract with Homeland Security next week. He turned back to Patterson. Unless you're pulling me. You know I won't do that. Patterson's jaw tightened. How many years, Daniel? How many identities before it's enough? Until the network is destroyed. Until our people stop dying from betrayal. He met Patterson's eyes. You knew who I was when you recruited me. I recruited a Delta Force sergeant with exceptional skills, not a ghost who dies and resurrects every few months. Same person, different methodology. Daniel stood. I need to prepare for tomorrow. The elimination squad needs to understand what they witnessed. Do they? Or would they be better off believing the legend? Daniel paused at the door. Legends create distance, sir. Understanding creates soldiers. Then he was gone, leaving Patterson alone with the base lights. 0700 hours. Day 2. The conference room was packed. The elimination squad sat at attention, Jake Reynolds with them despite his technical non-involvement. Sarah Kim was there too, having been added by special request. Director Harrison presided, with General Patterson observing from the corner. Daniel entered last, wearing sergeant's stripes on a fresh uniform. A Distinguished Service Cross ribbon was visible among his decorations, along with awards most of them couldn't identify. He moved to the front of the room without preamble. "Ladies and gentlemen." He surveyed them with those cold eyes. "You have questions." Cross, reduced to private as of 0600 hours, couldn't meet his gaze. "Sir, you hazed a fellow candidate, sabotaged equipment, endangered lives through negligence and cruelty." His tone was clinical. "Under normal circumstances, you'd all be facing courts-martial." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "Then why aren't we?" "Because these weren't normal circumstances. You were manipulated by Captain Morgan, selected specifically for your aggressive tendencies and pack mentality. You performed exactly as she predicted." He paused. "Which is why you're here instead of in custody." "I don't understand," Tony ventured. "You let us." Maria's voice was small. "You knew what we were doing and let us." "I needed Morgan to believe her plan was working. Your authentic hostility sold the deception." He pulled up a presentation. Photos of dead operators, all specialists, all killed in the last 3 years. These soldiers died because someone sold their identities to hostile forces. Captain Morgan was that someone. Your actions last night helped expose her. So we were what? Unwitting assets. Maria's voice cracked. You were tools. The question now is whether you can be reforged for legitimate purposes. Jake raised his hand. "Sir, respectfully, who are you? Really?" Daniel looked at Patterson, who nodded. He clicked to the next slide showing a younger version of himself in full combat gear, face obscured but stance unmistakable. Sergeant Daniel Cross, formerly 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Call sign Ghost Walker. Officially killed in action September 2019. Unofficially investigating internal threats to Special Operations personnel. The room was silent. Then Cross, swallowing his pride, asked, "The shooting last night, was that really you?" 15 targets in 16 minutes. All eliminations confirmed. He clicked again, showing aerial footage of his shooting positions, angles calculated, distances marked. Questions about technique. Sarah leaned forward. The 4-4-2 interval. What is it? Breathing pattern synchronized with heart rate and neural response. 4 seconds target acquisition, 4 seconds hold, 2 seconds reset. It becomes unconscious after sufficient repetition. He demonstrated with an imaginary rifle. The motion was hypnotic, almost mechanical. Developed in Damascus, refined through operational necessity. How many? Alex asked quietly. Total, 89 confirmed. Probable additional targets bring it to 97. He said it without pride or shame. Simple fact. Each one necessary. Each one remembered. That silenced them. The weight of those numbers, the reality of what he represented, settled over the room like a heavy blanket. This wasn't a story or legend. This was a man who'd eliminated more human beings than most soldiers ever encountered in combat. "Sir," Jake spoke carefully, "why come back? Why risk exposure? Because good soldiers keep dying. Because the enemy knows our faces before we know theirs. Because someone has to walk in the darkness to keep others safe." He clicked off the presentation. "And because I took an oath. Same as you." 0800 hours. The formal portion complete, Daniel shifted to instruction mode. The transformation was subtle but complete, from warrior to teacher in a heartbeat. "Cross, stand up." The man rose, shoulders hunched with shame. "Straighten up. You're a soldier, not a question mark." He waited until posture improved. "Your reduction in rank is effective immediately. You'll serve 8 months as a private, during which time you'll attend every leadership course available. Master Sergeant Thompson will be your direct supervisor." "Yes, sir." "You have intelligence and natural aggression. Properly channeled, These are assets. Improperly channeled, they create the kind of toxic environment that enables traitors like Morgan. Do you understand the distinction? I think so, sir. Think harder. Lives depend on it. He turned to Alex and Tony. You two have potential, but you follow without thinking. Report to psychological services for assessment. If you pass, you'll be retained with mandatory mentorship programs. Maria started to speak, but he cut her off. Emotional instability makes you a liability in critical situations. You're discharged, but honorably. Seek counseling. Learn emotional regulation. Reapply in 18 months if you develop stability. Finally, he faced Jake Reynolds. You demonstrated moral courage, tactical thinking, and situational awareness under peer pressure. Recommend immediate promotion to corporal and fast-track for advanced training. He studied Jake. Your father would be proud. Jake's eyes filled, but he maintained composure. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. You earned it by choosing right over easy. He addressed them all. That's the lesson here. Not that I'm special or that killing makes you worthy, but that choosing principle over convenience, even when it costs, is what separates soldiers from thugs. Sarah raised her hand. What about the others? The network you mentioned. Daniel glanced at Patterson, then back. Classified. But know this, last night was one victory in a longer war. Every facility, every unit, every program has potential infiltrators. Your job is to observe, analyze, and report unusual patterns. Don't create paranoia, but don't ignore instincts either. 0900 hours. The debrief concluded. The room emptied except for Daniel, Patterson, and Harrison. The director looked exhausted, the weight of the night's revelations showing. So what now? Harrison asked. Do we continue the program? Pretend none of this happened. You continue with enhanced security protocols, Patterson answered. Morgan's network will be dismantled quietly. No public trials, no media attention. Problems will simply disappear. And him? Harrison nodded at Daniel. Daniel Cross fails the final psychological evaluation, post-traumatic stress, possible dissociative episodes, discharged quietly with medical recommendations. Daniel's tone suggested he'd played this role before. He disappears into civilian life, forgotten. While Marcus Webb starts his new security consulting contract. He stood. Director, you have good people here. Trust them. Train them. But watch for the signs we missed with Morgan. Harrison stood as well, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Daniel took it. His grip was firm, calloused, real. Sergeant Cross, Ghostwalker, whoever you are. Harrison held the handshake. Thank you. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, perhaps the ghost of the man he used to be. Just doing my job, sir. The epilogue writes itself in the months that followed. Videos of the attack and response leaked despite security measures. The image of a lone figure on a rooftop systematically eliminating threats became instant legend, spawning countless conspiracy theories and hero worship websites. But the man himself was already gone. Sarah found the note in her locker, written in precise block letters. You have the instincts. Trust them. Train hard. Lead by example. D. Jake received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo of his father in dress uniform, standing next to a man whose face was obscured by shadows. On the back, he spoke of you often. Honor him by lifting others. Cross discovered his new training schedule included a handwritten edition. Leadership is earned through service, not demanded through force. Learn the difference. Someone who knows. The changes came quickly. New security protocols, enhanced psychological evaluations, a culture shift emphasizing integrity over aggression. The counter-terrorism program's reputation soared, with a 97% graduation rate and 0 security breaches. 6 months later, the court-martial of Captain Morgan proceeded in closed session. Her testimony revealed 19 other compromised personnel across multiple agencies. Each arrest prevented potential ambushes, saved lives that would never know they'd been in danger. Cross, still a private but showing remarkable improvement, led morning training sessions. His style had changed, Still demanding, but no longer cruel. He'd learned the difference between strength and bullying. Jake Reynolds graduated advanced training with honors, his instructors noting exceptional moral courage under pressure. He kept the photo of his father and the mysterious figure in his wallet, a reminder of standards to maintain. Sarah Kim broke 4 facility records and was selected for an elite counterintelligence program. She sometimes felt watched during difficult assignments, as if someone was checking her progress. The feeling was reassuring rather than unsettling. 1 year later, General Patterson stood in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60. The headstone read, Sergeant Daniel Cross, Ghost Walker, Beloved Protector. Fresh flowers lay beside it, wildflowers, his favorite. Still visiting? A voice asked behind him. He didn't turn. He'd learned to recognize that presence regardless of appearance. Today, the speaker was a brunette with glasses and a business suit. Marcus Webb, security consultant. Someone should maintain appearances. She moved beside him, studying the grave. Any complications? Phase 8 proceeding. 3 more nodes identified in the Justice Department. He paused. How long this time? 8 months minimum. The deputy director trusts Marcus. He's efficient, invisible, devoted to threat assessment reports. A ghost of humor. I've become quite proficient at PowerPoint presentations. And after Phase 9? Treasury has similar vulnerabilities. She touched the headstone briefly. Then 10, then 11, however many it takes. You could stop. We have other operators now. Others can't do what I do. She turned to face him. You knew that when you approved the program, when you agreed to list me as Kia. I knew many things. Doesn't mean I like all of them. They stood in silence, 2 weapons pretending to be people, maintaining a professional relationship that existed mostly in classified files and brief encounters. I should go, she said finally. Marcus has a briefing about suspicious communications intercepts in the Seattle office. Daniel, he caught her arm as she turned. Be careful out there. I'm always careful, sir. No, you're always effective. There's a difference. She studied him with those flat, dangerous eyes that had stared down death in a dozen countries. Then, surprising them both, she squeezed his hand briefly. I'll try to remember that. 2 years later, the news broke quietly, buried on inside pages. Federal Task Force announces major counterintelligence operation. 31 arrests. Connections to foreign intelligence services and organized crime. The investigation had been led by a mid-level consultant named Marcus Webb, who declined all interviews and had submitted his resignation the day before the arrests, citing family obligations. His work had been exemplary. The agency would be sorry to lose him. 3 days after the story ran, Marcus Webb's apartment was found empty. No forwarding address, no personal effects beyond basic furniture. The landlord said he'd been a perfect tenant, quiet, paid on time, never any trouble. Present day, Quantico's counter-terrorism program has the highest success rate and best security record in federal law enforcement. The culture emphasizes teamwork, integrity, and protection of fellow operators. Captain Morgan's name is never spoken, but her legacy lives on in the safeguards designed to prevent another like her. Sometimes, late at night, guards report seeing a figure on Building 47's roof, just a shadow there and gone, watching over the facility. The old-timers call it Guardian Watch, dismissing it as legend. But ammunition records show something curious. Every few months, 17 rounds of .50 BMG match-grade ammunition go missing from inventory. Exactly 17, the same number Ghost Walker used the night the training became combat. Director Harrison, now promoted to Deputy Assistant Director, keeps a photo on his desk. It shows a thin man in oversized ACUs covered in dust, being mocked by larger candidates. Most visitors assume it's about preventing harassment. They're half right. Every hunter becomes hunted eventually, he sometimes tells young agents. The question is whether you'll recognize the predator before they recognize you. In a hotel room in Portland, a woman with short auburn hair and blue eyes studies financial records from a major defense contractor. The patterns are subtle but present, money flowing to unexpected accounts, information following the money. Her secure phone buzzes. A text from a blocked number, Phase 12 confirmed. Assets in place. She deletes the message and returns to her spreadsheets. Tomorrow, Catherine Hayes starts her new job in cybersecurity analysis. She's eager, competent, completely forgettable. In her luggage, wrapped in civilian clothes, is a small equipment case. Inside, 17 rounds of .50 BMG match-grade ammunition, just in case. Because sometimes the training becomes combat. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. And sometimes the dead don't stay buried. Sometimes they just reload.